Hey everyone, this is Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince from Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Say, do you guys know what today is? Well, this is my 30th year being alive. In other words, my 30th birthday! And I decided to do something very special. You see, for as long as I can remember, I loved animated movies, and as I was growing up, I've seen lots of them, whether being bad, good, well-known, or underrated. So, since I'm 30 years old, I chose to count down 30 animated movies that I grew up with to see which one is my all-time favorite. Now, I need to let you guys know that I'll be looking at films that have made theatrical releases. So, no direct-to-video films or streamed movies will be featured here. And there may be a few ties in some of the spots. Plus, I'm not 100% sure how long this video will be, so I think it may be about 2 or 3 parts, so bear with me. Anyway, for all you at home on this special day, let's celebrate my 30th birthday with my top 30 personal favorite animated movies. Now, let's start off the list by talking about a family from the late 21st century. Released in summer 1990, not too long before I was born, this was the very first Hanna-Barbera movie that I ever watched, and the film that introduced me to the TV show in the first place. In this movie, George Jetson receives a promotion as vice president at the orbiting Orro asteroid. However, while George and the rest of his family are enjoying their new home in outer space, George learns that something or someone is sabotaging the machines at the new plant. To me, this film has classic Hanna-Barbera styled animation with okay CGI for its time, and zany humor at that. And I also like several of the new characters who the Jetsons meet, like George's new co-worker, Rudy 2, Rudy's son Teddy, who becomes Elroy's new best friend and teammate, Apollo Blue, who becomes Judy's new boyfriend, and Fergie. As for the Grungies, well, while they're the reason why the plant is being sabotaged due to the machines destroying their homes, I think they're cute and great characters as well, especially during the scene where they rescued Elroy from being buried in rubble. Plus, the musical score by John Debney is really futuristic, and the soundtrack is so wonderfully 80s, despite the fact that this movie was released in 1990. Still, my favorite song would have to be You and Me, sung by Judy's voice actress, Tiffany. And like I said in my blog of the movie, that song plays out like a Pink Floyd music video. However, the reason why this movie is on the bottom of the list is for 3 reasons. 1, the environmental moral at the end. 2, this was the last movie that Mel Blanc and George O'Hanlon voiced in before they passed away. And 3, I haven't watched too much of the Jetsons TV show as often as the other Hanna-Barbera cartoons, like Tom and Jerry or Scooby-Doo. But hopefully someday, someday that I can buy the full series DVD in my future. And while most people don't like this movie, at least it's a lot better than their crossover with WWE. And, of course, I also like their crossover with the Flintstones. Overall, Jetsons the movie is a film that's absolutely outer galactic. You know, one of my favorite movie genres would have to be musicals. I mean, they can be timeless and entertaining, but when it comes to jukebox musicals, that's when it can become pretty nostalgic. And there are two movies that deserve to take the stage for this spot. Starting with Strange Magic, this film is a musical fantasy story about two kingdoms, where primroses grow on the borders. These primroses have the power to make love potions. During the events of the story, the Bog King orders his minions to destroy all the primroses, and he kidnaps the perky fairy princess Dawn. But later, Bog King begins to gain a change of heart when he meets Dawn's feisty sister, Marianne, whose heart was broken by her philandering ex-fiancé. Now, I need to make myself perfectly clear that I am aware that this movie became a huge disaster at the box office, and the story is kind of all over the place, but here are my reasons for putting it on the list. One is that this film was inspired by Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, which was one of the toughest shows that I ever got to be in during junior high. Two is that the animation was done by Industrial Light and Magic, the same company who did the animation for Rango. And to me, the animation is really magical, even if some of the characters look a tad strange. Plus, I'm surprised that George Lucas has been developing this movie for about 15 years before it was put into production. Also, the two main lovers, the Bog King and Marianne, are very relatable, and they do have a lot in common, since one is a girl who was cheated on by a shallow jerk on her wedding day, which made her into a feisty, strong-hearted, and protective girl, and the other is a character who was in love with another female in the forest who left him despite his use of a love potion on her, as she was in love with someone else at the time, which sadly twisted the Bog King's heart and made him dark. Also, I think Sunny's relationship with Dawn is very unique, and I think that little imp is a really sneaky and mischievous creature, especially when it sprinkles the love potion on other creatures. And I'm kind of surprised that Brenda Chapman does the vocals for that little prankster. Also, I know a lot of people do not care for the songs in this movie, but I think they're very interesting to listen to, and due to two of them being from Elvis, I think George Lucas must have been a real Elvis fan during the time. Also, like many jukebox musicals, this movie made me want to go to iTunes and buy the original versions. Moving on to Sing, this movie was released during the ending of 2016, which is what I like to call the year of animated animal movies, which was the same time when films like Zootopia, Kung Fu Panda 3, Finding Dory, Storks, and The Secret Life of Pets were released. Speaking of which, Sing features more animal species than Zootopia does, like primates, insects, birds, fish, cats, dogs, and more. Anyway, the movie centers on Buster Moon, a koala who's trying to save his theater from getting repossessed. So he decides to host a singing competition. What I like about this movie is not only the animation by Illumination, but I like that it features 65 pop songs, which costed about 15% of the film's $75 million budget. Plus, I like how the story revolves around several characters who are all going through a certain problem. For example, not only is Buster going through financial difficulties, but there's also a teenage gorilla who does not want to follow in his father's criminal footsteps, a teenage porcupine whose boyfriend is too self-absorbed, a pig who is a mother to 25 piglets and is partnered with a flamboyant dancing pig named Gunter, an elephant with stage fright, and an arrogant white mouse who gets into trouble with 3 gangster bears. Plus, I like that Buster gets some help from other characters, like his assistant Miss Crawley, his best friend Eddie, who later becomes a stage tech, and Eddie's grandmother, Nana Noodleman, who at the end buys the theater. Also, some of my favorite songs in the movie include I'm Still Standin', sung by Johnny, Set It All Free, sung by Ash, and Don't You Worry About a Thing, sung by Mina. Also to note, I heard that during December of 2021, Buster Moon and the other animals will return to the big screen in Sing 2. And not only does it get me excited, but it also makes me curious of which songs will be featured and what the plot will be like. So, I'm praying to you, Illumination. With movies like Strange Magic and Sing, these are films that I want to give a standing ovation to. And now we come to one of the rare animated movies based on a true story. Now, this was the very first animated movie that I think I saw in theaters with my grandmother, and trust me when I say that this was a really special experience for me. Based on a real-life diphtheria serum run to Nome, Alaska, the film focuses on a wolf dog named Balto, voiced by Kevin Bacon, who supposedly led the team to town in time. However, just recently, I learned that in reality, while Balto did take part, he only ran on the final leg to Nome, while Togo did most of the work. But still, one of the reasons why I like this movie is because I think Balto is a very relatable character. Not just because he was treated like an outcast for a majority of the movie, but also because Balto had lingering issues about where he came from. But I'm glad that Balto was trying to do something right by braving a fierce blizzard and getting the antitoxin back to Nome to save Rosie and other children, while putting up with an arrogant husky jerk named Steel, voiced by the great Jim Cummings. Another reason why I like this movie is that Balto has some good friends who support him, like his goose caretaker, Boris, voiced by Bob Hoskins, 2 polar bears named Muck and Luck, both voiced by Phil Collins, and the beautiful Jenna, voiced by Bridget Hoffman. Plus, I think the animation is really beautiful and timeless, though it is sad that this was Amblemation's last animated movie. And there are a couple scenes that were very intense, like when a grizzly bear attacks Muck, Luck, and Boris, and when Balto has to outrun an avalanche and an icy cave-in. So why is this movie so low on the list? Well, it's because of a few things. One, there was no way for the humans to know that Balto was part wolf, and even if he was, it still makes him suited for an Arctic environment. And two, as a story, it would have worked better as only one movie. So, in other words, the following two sequels were unnecessary. Plus, I felt very disappointed that I never managed to find Balto's memorial statue during my last two visits to New York. And my parents had to beat me to it. But still, Balto is a movie that is highly underrated, and I'm happy that I got to experience this movie with my grandmother. Balto, a movie that is not dog, not wolf, but a real hero. You know, it's been 10 years since I got my big break at Musical Theater Village when I played the great and powerful Wizard of Oz. And ever since that summer, people have been saying how big and booming I sounded while voicing behind a giant head. And they also think that I'm far better than James Franco's portrayal. No offense. But not long after my second chance doing the show in 2014, I saw an animated Oz movie that got me really hyped up. Now, I want to remind you guys that Oz is no stranger to animation, because ever since the mid-2000s, after seeing Wicked, I've been checking out a few other animated Oz films, like Journey Back to Oz, starring Liza Minnelli, The Lion of Oz, which is criminally underrated, the Tom and Jerry crossovers, which were horrible. There was a Japanese animated adaptation from the early 80s, and there were a few animated Oz TV shows. Anyway, in this film, Dorothy and Toto are summoned back to Oz via Rainbow Mover due to her friends Scarecrow, Tin Man, Lion, and Glinda being taken hostage by the Witch of the West's incompetent brother, the Jester. Now, I may get a lot of bash for this, but I never thought this movie was bad, and it definitely was not a scam either. Before 2014, I never knew L. Frank Baum's great-grandson, Roger, wrote his own Oz stories, and after reading Dorothy of Oz at Barnes & Noble's, I felt that this movie was pretty similar. Plus, I think the animation by Prana is absolutely excellent, since these are the same people who did the CGI animation for the Tinkerbell and Planes movies. Also, I like how the movie shows us not only the Emerald City, but it also shows us some new locations like Candy County and China Country. Also, the movie has some scenes that are kind of reminiscent to the 1939 musical classic. Also, I like the new friends that Dorothy meets on her journey, like the overweight owl, Wiser, voiced by Oliver Platt, Marshall Mallow, voiced by Hugh Dancy, China Princess, voiced by Megan Hilty, and an old tree named Tug, voiced by Patrick Stewart. Also, I think Dorothy is a brave, spunky, and daring little girl, and I'm glad that Lea Michele got to voice her, since she did say in an interview that she's always wanted to be Dorothy ever since she was a little girl. Plus, I think the Jester, while silly, is a very threatening character. Not only does he turn several important Ozians into puppets, but he also has been making Oz horrendous, as well as causing earthquakes, creating illusions and deceptions, and he even hijacked the Great Wizard's machine. Also, as I said in my blog of the movie, the Jester has the personality of a Batman villain, and I still stand by that. Also to note, the songs by Bryan Adams, like When the World, Work With Me, and Even Then, are pretty good. Even though Candy Candy was a bit over the top and trippy, and the Jester's villain song was pretty eccentric. Speaking of which, there are a few parts, like Puppet Glinda, that can be pretty creepy. But keep in mind, folks, that Oz is known for its magic, wonder, and its horror. Legends of Oz: Dorothy's Return, a movie that is truly awesome. Now let's have some fun at the best hotel in animation history. The main reason why these three movies are together for this spot is because they're all directed by TV legend Genndy Tartakovsky, creator of Dexter's Laboratory and Samurai Jack. Plus, I think the animation for all three movies are very nostalgic, and the characters are like 3D versions of drawings that Genndy might have drawn in a sketchbook. Also, while Adam Sandler is my least favorite comedian, I think he does a decent job voicing as Dracula, and I like the other characters that are featured, like Frankenstein, his wife Eunice, Wayne the Werewolf, his wife Wanda, Griffin the Invisible Man, Murray the Mummy, including Blobby, along with his father Vlad, his daughter Mavis, his son-in-law Jonathan, and his grandson Dennis. Anyway, while the first movie is mainly about the hotel celebrating Mavis's 118th birthday, I like the plot where Mavis zings with Johnny, and I think they share some sweet scenes together, despite Drac getting in the way. Speaking of which, I thought Dracula's backstory on what happened to his late wife Martha was really heartbreaking. And the scene where Drac sees Johnny watching Twilight on an airplane made me realize that even real vampires hate that franchise. Also, I like the hotel's activities like yoga, tennis, bingo, swimming, charades, a sauna, a magic show, and dance parties. In the second movie, I like the vacation plot where Drac and his friends take little Dennis on a road trip in hopes for his fangs to grow in, while at the same time, Johnny takes Mavis to Santa Cruz, California. I also like Johnny and Mavis's wedding at the beginning, which made me think back to a scene that was deleted from the first movie. And I like the scene where Mavis does some hardcore biking moves, and the final climax where Dennis and the other monsters fight Bella and the other cronies was very hardcore. Plus, some of the funniest parts are when Wayne gets distracted by frisbees and tennis balls, when Blobby is used for balloon travel, when Murray throws out his back while conjuring up a sandstorm, and when Frankenstein catches fire. Also, I think Dennis and Winnie make a cute kid couple in this franchise. Finally, in the third movie, while it doesn't feature the hotel as the main setting, I like that the main focus is on Dracula's family and friends going on a summer cruise. At the same time, Drac falls in love with the Legacy's captain, Erica, who surprisingly is the descendant of monster hunter Abraham Van Helsing. Another thing I like about this movie are the side stops and activities like Monster Ball and the swimming pool, scuba diving to an underwater volcano, moon tanning and dolphin surfing at a deserted island, and a casino/rave party at Atlantis. Plus, I think Dennis and Winnie are pretty thick as thieves while sneaking Tinkles onto the ship. And I think they share some adorable scenes together. Same goes for Dracula and Erica. But by far the best scene in the entire movie is when Johnny and Dracula have a DJ battle against Van Helsing. And I couldn't help but laugh and dance along when the monsters were dancing to the Macarena. However, if you think Hotel Transylvania is over, then you're dead wrong. Because I hear that during the year 2021, Dracula and the other monsters will be returning in a fourth movie. And while Genndy Tartakovsky may not return as director, I just hope that it'll be just as fun as the past three movies. Overall, whether you're a human, monster, or unicorn, Hotel Transylvania is a trilogy that is packed with monster-erific fun. You know, come to think of it, Cartoon Network was one of my favorite channels growing up. And during the summer of 2002, Genndy Tartakovsky's friend, Craig McCracken, made a very special movie with just a little bit of sugar, spice, everything nice, and an accidental dose of Chemical X. Ever since I was young, the Powerpuff Girls was one of my favorite Cartoon Network shows, next to other classics like Courage the Cowardly Dog, Ed, Edd and Eddy, Codename Kids Next Door, and others. And while seasons 5 and 6 stunk, the original Powerpuff Girls series is a lot better than that 2016 reboot series. Plus, after seeing the Powerpuff Girls big screen origin movie with my best friend Steven, I was completely blown away. One example of why I love this movie is because it stays true to the original cartoon. Not only does it have Craig McCracken as director, but it also has him and his wife, Lauren Faust, in charge of the screenplay. Plus, the animation is pretty good due to the cinema budget, with some parts looking high definition. Also, I think the three leading voice actresses, Kathy Cavadini, Tara Strong, and Elizabeth Daly, do a spot-on job. Also, I think part of this movie brings back memories from a couple episodes, like Tough Love, where everybody in Townsville considers the girls as freaks. And I think the action is very hardcore when the girls fight Mojo Jojo and his army of evil monkeys. Though, I still think the power tag scene was pretty crazy, and I didn't like the scene where Buttercup blames Blossom for having them walk home from school. As I said in my blog, how would they know if they would run into an insane evil genius monkey who would take advantage of them? Speaking of which, this film does have a couple good messages. Not only does it show what strangers do when they take advantage of you, but it also explains that people can get scared or angry when they don't understand something very special or unique. Also, not only is this the Powerpuff Girls origin story, but it's also the villain Mojo Jojo's origin story, which I still stand by feels reminiscent to the episode Mr. Mojo's Rising, where he started out as Professor Utonium's mischievous lab monkey until he pushed the professor into the Chemical X, which not only created the girls, but also mutated his brain. Also, while Mojo Jojo is the main villain of the movie, and a brilliant one at that, this movie also shows other Powerpuff Girl villains, like Fuzzy Lumpkins and the Gang Green Gang. So, overall, if you want to introduce your children to this action-packed series, be sure to start with this movie, the Powerpuff Girls movie, a film that must be watched before bedtime. For this spot, we're going to talk about a creepy and kooky family that me and my theater friends got to be part of last year. Like with Oz, the Addams Family is no stranger to animation. Sure, they started out as comics, but they also got 2 animated TV shows, both produced by Hanna-Barbera, and they also got a crossover with Scooby-Doo. In the movie, 13 years after Gomez and Morticia got married and moved into their new mansion in New Jersey, the Addams discover that a new neighborhood has been built where the marsh used to be. There, they meet the shady Margot Needler, who's trying to raise a perfect community. And after meeting the eccentric family, she's willing to do anything to get them out of her town. In my eyes, the animation and character designs are very reminiscent to the Addams Family comics. And I love the creepy antics that the Addams do throughout this movie. And I still think the Addams mansion looks very creepy and mysterious. Not only does it have a loud echoing voice, but there's also a living tree, a man-eating plant, living paintings, a polar bear rug, and a gate that bites. Also, this film has some scenes that feel reminiscent to other horror movies like Dracula, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Frankenstein, It, and more. Also, I think Wednesday, voiced by Chloe Grace Moretz, gets a lot of character development in this movie due to the fact that, like Mavis from Hotel Transylvania, she feels curious about the world outside her mansion. Plus, I like that Wednesday makes friends with Parker Needler. As for Pugsley, I still think he's a riot when it comes to using explosives, and while he's struggling when it comes to preparing for his mazurka, my favorite scene is when Pugsley slingshoots bombs at huge boulders to protect his family. And I also love the parts when Lurch plays a few tunes on the piano and the organ. Also, I think the rest of the Addams Family are really outrageous and fun. And I like that the movie teaches us not to judge people just because they're different. But my one problem with this movie is the villain. To me, Margot Needler is a real pain in the neck kind of character. Not only because of Allison Janney's acting, but because she's very predictable due to her wanting everything in her town to be perfect and plastic. Plus, she also neglects her own daughter. She's planted hidden cameras in everybody's houses, and she spreads false rumors about the Addams family through social media. Anyway, I think this is a really wacky and kooky movie, and I'm definitely looking forward to more Addams fun in their upcoming sequel next fall. And remember, when you're in Addams, you do what Addams do or die. Believe me when I say that this movie's on the list for a completely different reason than the rest. As most of you know, the year 2020 stunk. Ever since March, all of us have been forced under lockdown. And because movie cinemas were closed for most of the year, a lot of the new movies, like these, had to be released digitally, which made me kind of annoyed. But anyway, the reason why I chose Onward for the list is mainly because the story and theme were kind of interesting. Plus, I'm a big fantasy fan. This recent Pixar movie is a modern fantasy centering on two teenage elf brothers who embark on a huge quest to find a phoenix gem to resurrect their late father with a visitation spell. One example of why I love this movie is due to Pixar's extraordinary style of CGI animation and storytelling. And I really love how each mythical creature is portrayed in this movie. Also, I like the several stops that Ian and Barley go to while on their quest, like the Manticore Tavern, the Mountains of Ravens Point, and the Underground River. Also, to me, this film may seem kind of reminiscent to stuff like Indiana Jones, Final Fantasy, Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons, and World of Warcraft. But on the other hand, it still makes an emotional coming-of-age film and a thrilling road trip. Plus, it improves on the relationship with brothers. And it was pretty surprising that this film does not have a main villain. Instead, it has a random obstacle in the form of a huge dragon-shaped golem. Plus, the main character Ian, voiced by Tom Holland, is very relatable due to his lack of confidence and nervous energy. But he does have the potential to be a successful wizard. His brother Barley, voiced by Chris Pratt, is a free-spirited guy and a huge history buff who loves magic and role-playing games. Plus, Barley's personality kind of makes me think of one of my oldest cousins, Shane. Also, I think Ian and Barley's mom, Laurel, is a lot better than Julia Louis-Dreyfus's previous Pixar character, Ada from A Bug's Life, due to her determined personality and her bravery. And I just love the scene where she declares herself a mighty warrior. Also, I think it's pretty cool, but a tad strange that Laurel is dating a centaur cop named Colt Bronco. Lastly, Ian and Barley's late father, Wilden, kind of makes me think of my late Italian grandfather, Michele, due to his death when I was 4 years old. But while this is a great movie, the only thing that I didn't like about it was that Simpsons short that preceded it. Due to The Simpsons being very overrated these days, and I don't think it fits to put a Fox short in front of a Pixar movie. But thank goodness it's not featured on the DVD. However, while I am relieved that some movie theaters are back in business again after 6 months, I just hope that I can see more movies in theaters like these. And once everybody is cured from the coronavirus, we can finally move onward with our lives again. When I was young, I used to be a crazy Pokemon fan after my dad took me to see Mewtwo Strikes Back. And ever since then, I've been collecting the Pokemon cards, playing the numerous video games, and watched the anime series, as well as watching several other Pokemon movies. However, to me, there's one Pokemon movie that beats them all. Taking place during the Johto Journey season, not long after Professor Hale's disappearance, his daughter Molly accidentally awakens the unknown, a mysterious Pokemon who turns her mansion into a crystal palace and gives her a new father in the form of the legendary beast Entei. Meanwhile, Ash Ketchum, Pikachu, Misty, and Brock arrive in Greenfield, joined by Professor Oak and Ash's mother Delia. But things take a personal turn when Molly wishes for a new mom and Entei kidnaps Delia. So, it's up to Ash and his friends to venture into the crystallized Hale Mansion to rescue Delia and stop these strange events once and for all. To me, the story is well written and thought-provoking, but also tragic and heartwarming at the same time. Plus, it's pretty dark for a Pokemon movie. Also, before I blogged the movie in 2014, I didn't realize that it was released in IMAX, while I saw it in a regular cinema. Plus, the visuals of the expanding crystallization in the fields gives me goosebumps, and the rest of the visuals are really amazing. Also, the portrayal of Entei is really unique, but at the same time, Entei makes a great father figure. Also, I think Dan Green makes Entei a real badass. The unknown, while not technically legendary Pokemon, are still very mysterious, and it is cool that they do more in this movie than just hidden power. You see, according to Professor Oak, the unknown have the ability to create new realities and alter the world using thoughts and dreams. Plus, I think Molly is a very sympathetic character due to the disappearance of her parents, and she does have strong emotions. However, I like that, like most children her age, Molly has a strong desire to become a Pokemon trainer, and because of her belief in Entei, it was able to defeat the unknown with a huge ice blast. Plus, I think Amy Birnbaum does a terrific performance as Molly. Not just Molly as a little girl, but also Molly when she's a teenager or a grown-up. Also, I think Ash's mom, Delia, plays a very important role. While she is in a hypnotic trance for a small part of the movie, I think she makes a sweet second mother for Molly while comforting her. Plus, it was also interesting that Delia has known Spencer Hale ever since she was a schoolgirl. And I like that Ash and the gang use their Pokemon not only for Pokemon battles, but also to break into the mansion. Another thing that made this movie so amazing was the return of Ash's Charizard. When earlier in the show, it was left to train at Charcific Valley. I also like that Ash uses a Pokegear, which was lent to them by their new friend Lisa. Also, while Team Rocket are still shenanigans, I think they make okay minor supporting characters. And they do have some of the silliest lines ever. especially when they break the fourth wall a couple times. Also, I like the short Pikachu and Pichu, where at the end, Ash and the gang, along with their Pokemon, celebrate the anniversary of Ash and Pikachu's friendship. And that, to me, is very special. Overall, Pokemon 3 is a film that's a must-watch for every Pokemon fan, and I love how it teaches us that we always battle hard and always stay friends. Pokemon 3 the movie, Spell of the Unknown. Catching them all had never been better than this. As we all know, A Christmas Carol is one of the most classic holiday stories ever. And it's my musical theater village friends' most beloved traditions ever. And for this spot, the version of Christmas Carol that I choose for my list will be this one. Now, I guess you may be asking, why do I choose this version compared to the other Christmas Carol adaptations? Well, for one thing, I think motion capture is a very interesting tool for animation due to it looking very realistic. Plus, this was Robert Zemeckis' second motion capture Christmas movie, the first being The Polar Express. Another reason why I put this version on my list is because during its theatrical run, I got to see it in 3D with my musical theater village friends at the El Capitan Theater in Los Angeles. I mean, how special was that? Also, I like that the movie features a prologue without a narrator. And I thought Jim Carrey made a great Scrooge. Not only that, but I thought the three spirits of Christmas that Scrooge meets on his journey to change his ways were very creative. You see, past is portrayed as a candle, present is portrayed as a jolly giant who transforms the room into the homes of Bob Cratchit and Fred, and future is a shadow. Also, I think the horror scenes were very well executed. For example, the scene with Marley's face on the knocker made me jump out of my seat. And the part where I saw the Ghost of Christmas Future's face made me scream. I mean, Mr. Dickens would have loved those parts if he were still alive today. And just to let you know, those of you who don't cry during Tiny Tim's death is born without a heart. Also, I think the scene where Jacob Marley warns Scrooge about his fate made me think back to when I played Marley during my freshman year of high school back in 2005. And I thought Gary Oldman did a terrific performance. Also, the film features a lot of big-named actors like Bob Hoskins, Cary Elwes, Robin Wright Penn, Colin Firth, Ryan Ochoa, Daryl Sabara, and Leslie Manville. And I also like the scene where Scrooge attends Fred's Christmas dinner, and I also love the God Bless Us Everyone song performed by Andrea Bocelli during the end credits. However, the main reason why this movie is at number 21 is because the scene with the horse carriage, while still scary, kind of drags the movie for me. Plus, nowadays, Image Movers Digital is dead after the box office disaster on Mars. But despite those nitpicks, I make it a tradition to watch this movie every year during the holidays. With a motion capture movie like A Christmas Carol, it really makes Tiny Tim observe, God bless us everyone.